Welcome all to the Lynchburg Parks and Recreation Master Plan Unveiling. I want to welcome those in the room with us tonight and those joining us on Zoom. Following this presentation, questions and comments will be addressed from those here in person up here on this microphone. And for those in the Zoom, we ask you to send your questions in, type them into the chat, and they'll be read aloud here by our moderators. Also, following the presentation, comments can be made for a 2-week period until October 10th, 2022. And that email address is askthedirector@lynchburgva.com, or excuse me, lynchburgva.gov. We'll post that on our Facebook and on our website, and it will also be at the end of this presentation. This is a final draft, and we anticipate feedback that will require modifications to this plan before being presented to City Council. Tentatively, the plan is scheduled to go to City Council at the 4 p.m. work session on Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. The plan is scheduled to be presented at the Planning Commission for adoption into the city's comprehensive plan. Before we get started, I know some of you have already enjoyed some of the refreshments. We do have snacks and drinks at the back of the room, and the restrooms are at the back and to the right through the double doors. I have an introduction. We have with us this evening the acting deputy city manager, Kent White. He's my boss. I also want to recognize previous director of libraries, Marilyn Martin. She also is a member of our Friends of Lynchburg Parks and Rec group. Welcome. And welcome to everybody else. I also want to acknowledge a dignitary that we have in our presence this evening, City Councilman Bo Wright. Welcome, Councilman Wright. Glad to have you. I also want to take a minute to acknowledge my awesome lead team. Chris Higgins, Park Service Manager, if you can give a little wave. Maggie Mace, Recreation Service Manager. Ricky Kowalowski, Lynchburg Community Market Manager. Charlotte Lester, Neighborhood Centers Manager. And last but not least, John Ramsey, Support Service Manager. Here. They worked very hard on this plan, from fulfilling data requests from the consultants to implementing our strategies for public engagement to proofreading the actual document. It took a lot of time. I also want to recognize the Lynchburg Parks and Recreation staff in the room who also helped out with interviews and things like that. So give a little hand wave for the rest of the staff in the room. Good job. A brief summary on the project. The last time the Parks and Recreation Department conducted a needs assessment and comprehensive master plan was 24 years ago. The Park and Rec Department proposed this project, and City Council approved the funding for the study in the 2021 Capital Improvement Plan budget. The needs assessment request for proposal generated 7 qualified consulting firms. A team of city staff, including finance, community development, information technology, and the Park and Rec Department, conducted an extensive screening process, scoring the proposals and the finalist presentations. Lowe's Design out of Nashville, Tennessee, was awarded that contract. They brought subcontractor Barry Dunn, well known with the National Park and Recreation Association, their superstar, Barbara Heller, onto the team. The needs assessment study has led to this comprehensive park master plan. This is an all-encompassing look at the department, from our program offerings to our fees, to park maintenance, to the organizational structure, and finally the build out of the capital improvement plan over the next 10 years. This is an ambitious plan. This project began back in February of 2021 with the data set request from the consultants. The GIS division of the Information Technology Department were instrumental in fulfilling the extensive mapping requests. Lynchburg Water Resources Department also assisted with flood plans and other related documents. This was very important in planning our parks and trails, as many of those are along the Blackwater Creek watershed. And then about our great community engagement. It was incredibly successful. The City Council interviews, as well as interviews with city leaders, key staff, along with stakeholder meetings and focus groups, had over a 90% attendance rate. The 23 pop-ups hosted by the consultants in Lynchburg Parks and Rec Department had almost 900 participants. The project website had close to 2,000 unduplicated participants. Only people who logged on to the website and gave their email address and completed one or all four of the sections of the website were counted. So the exact number is 1901. There were thousands more that visited that website and perused the project, what other people had written, but they did not log in, they were not counted. In the end, this project will have over 4,000 citizens weighing in on the Parks and Rec needs of Lynchburg. The consultants have used this extraordinary community engagement feedback, as well as population-based and access-based level of service analysis, benchmarking, site evaluations, gap analysis, connectivity analysis, and best practices research to create recommendations found in this Lynchburg Parks and Recreation Master Plan. The plan is used as a visionary framework for long-term use and development. Some recommendations may or may not be considered or implemented. This is going to be based on changing real-world conditions, which we see all the time, and other applicable factors. Now I'd like to introduce the project manager, Will Hager from Lowe's Design, who will discuss their findings and ultimate recommendations. Let's give Will a warm welcome.
All right, thank you for having me. Thank you for the introduction, Jenny. It really has been a privilege to work on this plan for the last year and a half, really. We've had lots of great interactions with the staff, with the public, and lots of good feedback on the draft so far. And now we're looking for feedback from you. So we'll get started. So the presentation tonight is going to cover a few key things that really help us develop these master plans. Again, these are intended to serve as 10-year plans. They include tons of recommendations, including staffing fees, capital investments, the whole 9 yards. So what we're going to do tonight is do an overview of those, and then we're going to provide you with where you can access the full documents and provide additional feedback for us. Next slide. Just to reiterate, we had a really strong team. Lowe's Design is based out of Nashville. We have offices in Knoxville, Atlanta, Denver, and coming soon to Virginia. We were partnered with Barry Dunn, who really helped us understand the operational dynamics for Lynchburg. And then again, the lead team and all the Parks and Rec staff here were critical for us to develop this plan. But first, why even invest in parks? These are just some of the benefits that we know parks provide for communities. Their societal benefits, their economic benefits, and obviously health benefits. So we want to view these investments through this lens so that we know where we hope the money is going to go and where that time and effort will reap rewards. And this master plan, it's a 10-year plan. It's a very dense document. It's also very flexible. We want you to revisit it over time. Don't put it on a shelf. We want you to actively engage with it and amend it, tweak it, change it as you need to, because your community is constantly changing too. We want to make sure this document serves you today, but also going forward. But first, we need to understand the community, and we start by reviewing your demographics. We want to understand as much as we can. So we use the latest census data available. These are some of the things that we learned. Lynchburg is incredibly young. It's the youngest major city in Virginia. That's due in part to the large number of universities. But beyond that, that's a growing segment of your society. So you want to make sure that you're serving those needs. You also have a significant senior population. So that's another contingent with different needs that also needs recognition. You're also relatively diverse when compared to state and national numbers. And the way that is helpful to understand is when you're looking at your participation data, are those racial demographics reflected in your participation the same way they are in the census? And if not, is there some barrier to overcome there? Is there a different way to reach out or a different offering to provide to get people involved? And then we need to understand income. Nobody likes to talk about money, but it's really important in this case. We want to know what people can afford and where they may need assistance or scholarship for different programs, because we want to make sure that that's not another barrier for access to these services. We also look at very high level health rankings for the community. And what we found here was really interesting. You have incredible access to exercise opportunities, especially through the trails, outdoor recreation offerings and opportunities, but we're still seeing relatively high obesity rates and inactivity rates. So that may indicate there are different types of barriers, maybe lack of time, lack of money, lack of transportation. So there's something else there that's not making these opportunities yield increased health benefits like they do in some other cities. So now that we have an understanding somewhat of the demographics, we want to speak to the public, engage with you as many different ways as we can to collect as much data as possible. Jenny hit on it a little bit. We had an incredible amount of data from these efforts. It basically realized themselves in 3 different ways. We had a project website. I hope you're able to take advantage of that. There were 4 different exercises that we asked you to complete there. The one on the left was a map where you could place different ideas, different comments, things that you like, things you were concerned about on the map physically. And within seconds of the website being up, we started getting very specific recommendations from a lot of different people. So it was exciting to see. We also had different ways to comment. Just in general, there was a survey, and the graphic on the upper right, it kind of shows you where some of the priorities are. Trails were significantly important priorities that were yielded through this public engagement effort. So that remained the case through the project. We also had a survey. This is something we typically do. We try to get as many people to participate with that as possible. And overall, people are very, very appreciative of the Parks Department, the services they provide, the facilities that they offer, but they also want to see improvements and investment in them. We also see that the Blackwater Creek Natural Area is the most visited. It's an incredible facility. It ties in nicely with several other parks. So that's something that could be further developed. And then you see trails mentioned in several different comments, and the desire for increased investment and further investment in that. So this chart is a product of these pop-up events. We held those in, I think it's 21 different locations, and those are indicated in the legend at the bottom. But what we see when we ask people about their top prioritized facilities that they would like to see here, this is what rose to the top: farmers market, paved walking and hiking trails, boardwalks, different type of trail, canoe and kayak blueways, which you have tremendous opportunities here with the Blackwater Creek and James River, and also fishing. Just outside of this top 5 was recreation swim facilities, which you appear to be somewhat limited in. So that's something else to keep in mind going forward. The next slide is going to do the same thing for programs. And what we see here, as well as a lot of other communities similar to Lynchburg, is that special events like concerts, movies in the park are top priorities consistently. But here we also have additional interest in gardening classes, cooking classes, and things like that. So the common themes for the public engagement was a desire for increased improvements to existing parks, nature programs and trails to be expanded, a need for new parks in specific areas of Lynchburg, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. And then just the realization that a significant amount of Lynchburg residents do travel outside of the city for recreation opportunities. That may be a product of geography because you have such incredible national and state parks in your area, but they may also be looking for something that's just not provided here. And then residents of Lynchburg love their parks and their trails, and they want to support increased investment in them. So going back, we did identify 7 specific areas that either need a park or need a different type of park than what they currently have. And this just goes to increase the level of service across the community. What was really interesting, our methodology seemed to almost mirror, almost exactly, a previous study conducted by Trust for Public Land. So we have really good confidence that these areas are in need of some sort of park investment. And in the full document, you can see a series of maps that further illustrate that. We also made recommendations for your existing parks that are specific to that property or in that facility, and those can be found in the master plan as well. Other recommendations include ways to increase trail connectivity. The need for an indoor recreation center to serve the community is something that really jumped off the screen to us when we started looking at the portfolio and what might be missing. And that was backed up by some of the programs that people wanted to see within the community too. And then the expansion of the Templeton Senior Center. It's a great facility, but that is a growing segment of the population. So we probably need to plan for that expansion. Trails, again, were a serious priority that we needed to understand very well. And we started looking at ways to connect the existing trails and linking them to parks and schools and other community destinations. This is the map that was produced from that. In addition to this map, there is one that includes the outer loop as well. That is a different type of priority. We kind of see these as phase 1 and 2, highlighted with the red and orange lines, as your top priorities. So be sure to take that into consideration when you're reading through the document. And then we wanted to get into programming. Programming is obviously critical. You provide a lot of different types of programs, but we want to make sure that we're aware of national trends per age group for different types of programs. And those are highlighted to the left. It's discussed further in the document, but because you are such a young city, the 13 to 24 year age group, and then getting just beyond that age group into post grads and new families, we want to be sure to look at those two kind of middle ones. Things like esports and parkour are newer developments for a lot of parks departments, but you also still have a lot of interest in outdoor recreation, cycling, group cycling and fitness, and then paddle sports here, obviously a pretty unique opportunity. And again, going back to the priorities that we heard from you, we're looking for ways to increase special events such as concerts and movies in the park. And then those specific classes, cooking and nutrition classes, adult fitness and wellness and gardening, those things are fully supported by the community, but they need the right type of facility for them to be conducted. And this kind of comes into an area where we want to be balanced. We want to make sure that the programs you're providing are hitting the right segment of the society. So in Lynchburg, over a quarter of your population could be considered as youth, but a significantly larger percentage of your programs are geared toward those. And I think that's pretty typical of most departments. You obviously want to serve those kids because they have wider interests and you just don't know what they're going to be into yet. But you want to balance it out. And when you look at the other end of the spectrum towards the seniors, they represent a quarter of your population as well, but there's only 13% of the programs currently targeted towards them. So that might be an area where we can increase some programming and expand those offerings. And that's the first recommendation you see here on the top. Expand programming dedicated to those active seniors, as well as the recent college graduates, because we want to hopefully retain all these bright kids that are coming out of your universities. And then provide programs and services at the right price point where people can still access it, but you can also recover some revenue along the way as well. And we'll talk about that a bit more in a second. We also heard that there were transportation barriers, especially when it comes to youth sports. Kids are having trouble getting to practice fields because those fields are in very specific areas of town. So one way to address that would be to provide more practice fields around neighborhood centers and within neighborhoods so the kids can access them a bit easier and it's less of a burden for the parents or caregivers. And then improve access to seasonal programs by expanding the printed guide, making sure people are aware of everything that's being offered here. We also want to encourage that indoor programming space, indoor recreation facility, so that all these great programs can happen in an appropriate environment. And then increasing access to local bodies of water for kayaking and canoeing. Obviously, there are some physical constraints in certain parts of the river, but there's plenty of opportunities for increased outdoor recreation along the James and Blackwater Creek. This graphic represents the department's philosophy on cost revenue recovery. So obviously we can't give everything away for free. It would be great if we could, but we can hope to balance it and create a sustainable department in terms of revenue. So what this represents is, you can kind of see the pyramid in the back. At the base of that pyramid, you have most of your offerings that are free or no cost with no expectation of generating revenue. But as you, because they're providing community-wide benefit, but as you kind of go up that pyramid, your expectations for revenue increase because your audience is more targeted and those individuals are more willing or able to pay some type of fee for that offering. And the goal here is not to generate tons and tons of money, but it is to cover your losses and create a more sustainable revenue flow for the department. And that's discussed further in the master plan. The next section is our CIP, or capital improvements plan. This is a sampling of the top priorities from that plan. Again, this covers that 10-year time frame, and it's very ambitious. There are a lot of really exciting things in that plan, but we wanted to highlight some of these for the discussion tonight. Again, we heard from the public that the top priorities was improvements to existing parks. So the top two categories, accessibility and general park improvements and existing park renovations, really tie into that priority from the public. But then we also know that we need some new facilities in some key areas of town. So new park and facility development, including that indoor recreation center and a couple of neighborhood parks, are going to be highlighted there. And then trail development. If we heard one thing, if we only heard one thing, it would have been trail development. So we budgeted healthy amounts for greenway and blueway development. Blueway are kayaking and canoeing trails. So we've allocated some money there as well. The larger CIP is in the full master plan. As Jeannie said, and I've said, it is ambitious, but we want to make sure that everything is captured there in case that opportunity arises where you can fund something that you maybe didn't anticipate funding before. So in summary, the future is really bright for Lynchburg. You've got an incredible amount of support for the Parks Department. People really understand the value here, and they want to see the Parks Department grow and improve over time. And they're very supportive of those further investments that are required there. So the next slide will provide some links. Feel free to use the QR code to access the site where you can download and review the executive summary. I believe we have some copies here tonight of that. And then the full master plan, as well as the appendices. They're pretty big files, so you might need to be a little patient with us there, but we want to hear from you. We want to know what your comments and thoughts are going forward. This is a final draft, but if there's something that we need to address, we definitely want to do that before we take it further to elected bodies. And with that, I guess we'll open it up for questions.
We'll start the public comment period. Anybody that has a comment or question are welcome to come up. It doesn't look like a microphone, but it is. Square off.
Nope.
We're also going to get questions that are in the Zoom chat. And as a reminder, we'll have 2 weeks until October 10th. If you have any questions or any comments regarding this plan as well, and we'll make that email address available on our website, on the project website, and probably also on Facebook. So questions, comments, thoughts, you're welcome to come up, and if you, yeah, sure. Hannah, do you have some comments? Does he need to? Yeah.
Okay, my name is Rodney Izzy. I live in the Windhurst section. And I noticed in the documents that you were talking about something to be done in the Windhurst section. Could you elaborate on that?
We can't elaborate. We know that that's a section that is what we consider a park desert. As far as identifying an actual plat of land or something. We're not prepared to do that.
Couple other things, you showed the inner loop map and you said there's an outer loop map. Is there a way to get a hard copy of that?
The outer loop map is in the plan.
It's in the master plan. Well, the series. Okay.
Lastly, I am a member of the Central Virginia Master Naturalist. I think there might be a couple other people here tonight. We are open to volunteer for anything that you might need us for. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Hey, it's great. Tamara Reynolds, our volunteer coordinator, I'm sure she'll get with you before you walk out of the room. I did want to say one thing about the outer loop. The outer loop, we're looking at connecting to other counties. So connecting potentially to the downtown, in the downtown 2040 master plan. One section of the John Lynch Bridge there's an actual plan for that to be turned into a linear park across. So they'll be giving up one lane of the bridge for a linear park if that were to come to fruition. So that would be our connection to Amherst.
Bedford County and Amherst County through Lynchburg.
Right. And the other the connection on that side is Poplar Forest, connecting to Poplar Forest.
They've just opened the road to Poplar Forest. They did a really nice job with that.
That would be the connection from Amherst to Bedford. And we hope that it would go through Nelson County all the way to Crozet Tunnel. That's our hope as a regional trail connection.
I hope I lived that long.
I do too.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm T. Upshur. I was wondering, is there anything in the plan that addresses sort of continuing maintenance? It's always been a little pet peeve of mine that the city of Lynchburg doesn't seem to have the funds to really maintain what they develop. And so I want to make sure we're not biting off more than we could chew, because we already have, you know, needs in our various areas to just maintain what we have.
It's a great comment. That was actually what a lot of people who filled out surveys and things said, was maintain what we have, but I'll let Will answer that. With that one.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it's something that many departments struggle with. You know, you've got this great property, this great facility. How do we continue to maintain it? And the way we've addressed that in the plan is through specific park assessments, but also a discussion of staffing for the future and phasing that staffing plan to improve and expand upon current maintenance efforts. They've got a great team that does a great job with what they have, but like many understand, there's many priorities, and sometimes the needs are greater than the hands that are available to do the work. So I think that's some of what we've seen here, but it's a great point. And again, reflected in the public engagement, that improvements to existing parks are really that key thing that a lot of people are looking for. We looking for some Zoom comments? Yeah, all the charts are also available in the PDFs, probably a little bit better resolution once you download those, but we could go back to some of those if it's something specific. There's also many others in there. This is just kind of the highlights, and also the printed executive summaries probably include some of those too. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I see public works out there certain times, because they are the ones who do a lot of the maintenance.
Mhm.
Is there, what I understand is public works takes care of everything else in the city. So is there any thought in this plan of having particular people for the parks that are under the parks as opposed to?
Yeah, that was a topic that was discussed a lot going forward. Public Works does have a lot on their plate. They do a really good job with what they have. I think where we landed in terms of the overall recommendation is to staff up over time within Public Works or in parks. But how do you prioritize road maintenance and everything else that Public Works has to do over trails? It's a difficult decision. So what the master plan recommends is increasing staffing over time to accommodate that need. Yes, sir.
As a citizen of 2450, my majority of my life, I came here to possibly chastise you for not including us in your project. However, I was excited to see that 4 of your recommendations represented our area. We've been waiting a long time, and not to bring up the annexation situation, but when I was building a home in my new neighborhood, I had several ladies approach me and say, "Oh my goodness, we're finally getting the park that we were promised." Okay, College Park subdivision. Now, Heritage Park has been sitting there for quite a while. I see $3 million possible, but I also heard a question about what was possible for Windsor Hills. What is possible for Brookville? What is possible for Cornerstone, Lynchburg? It doesn't seem like you're able to identify that. I hope you can identify where $3 million would go to the Heritage Park. I think it's important that we open up these parks to neighborhoods. Idaho Park is a wonderful park, but everyone has to ride there. Okay? Riverwalk, accessible, lots of neighborhoods. We have Brookville Village, Richland Hills, Vista Acres. All those neighborhoods, they have no. I really am. The city councilman one time described to me how the city dump was going to be a gateway to the city of Lynchburg, and the old dump was going to be turned into a beautiful park. I don't see that happening. In fact, he described how we had a park in our neighborhood and we could access it easily. It was down Wingfield Road in Yellow County. No, the city councilman, I was rather disappointed to hear that. So I'm excited. You've got 4 identified areas: Fortville, Brookville, Windsor. I didn't see Heritage Park, but that's number 1. Okay, so thank you. Thank you. I hope you'll take this initiative and run with O2 in mind.
Thanks for the comments. I would encourage you to look at the full plan. I think you'll see some more details there. When we identify these new parks in the CIP, our typical approach is to budget a small amount for additional concept planning, more public engagement, more conceptual design. What should be in that park? Should it be a neighborhood park that just caters to those residences in a walking distance, or should it be a larger community park with larger features and a little bit more parking to draw people to the area? So I think you'll see some of that in there as well. The Tyriana Park is referenced, as well as some of the other concept plans that this department is already working on. So Chris was critical in helping us understand everything that was already in the works before we got involved in creating the master plan. Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Sure. So I just want to know how your works when you.
Yeah, it's always a struggle. What we've done is proposed a phased approach to these physical improvements, the CIP itself. So we've got our top tier, our secondary tier, and our third tier. Now it's up to you and your elected officials to move those around as funding becomes available, as priorities change. But again, what we heard most from the public was that we want to improve our existing, we want to expand trails, and then we want to address these park deserts as soon as we can. So I think that's what you'll see phase plan. Any other from the chat? Sure.
Yeah, we've got one from Jason Stubbs. Says, I'm an investor from Houston and just moved to Lynchburg and would like to see how I can get started helping you guys with any funds for the community.
Sounds exciting. Yeah. Well, one way to approach that opportunity is to work with your community development department and make sure that new developments as they come on include open space. And hopefully this plan, if development is occurring near one of the identified areas that needs a park, maybe they can include a park as part of their entitlement process.
Yeah, another one, do you have plans to increase the city's sports infrastructure, more soccer fields as the sport continues to rise in popularity and attendance? The World Cup in 4 years will surely create a wave of interest.
It seems like youth sports across the board are on the rise here in Lynchburg. So yes, more additional athletic fields, better maintained athletic fields is definitely part of the plan.
We've got one, he or she says that they agree with Mike, and how they used is, and just how used is Heritage Park. We never got sidewalks down Leesville Road after 40 years.
I think Heritage Park represents a really significant opportunity. That half of Lynchburg is pretty underserved with parks in general. It's been on your books for a while, but there's not a lot of improvements there. But what we propose is further development of Heritage Park in addition to some other neighborhood parks in that general area.
Have you, I'm sorry if I missed it, have you pointedly stated how to access the whole plan?
Yes, I don't know if they're seeing this slide.
Not
Currently?
Well, actually,
Okay.
yeah, they are.
Okay, so this QR code in the middle of the screen, you can take a picture with your phone, or you can access the link below that. You can access all the draft documents in their current state. Yes, it's linked through the department website as well.
No. So is there a plan for an event venue that is away from downtown where people often avoid due to parking, walking, hills, walking long distance, etc.?
That's not something we've specifically heard as a need, but you do have some sizable parks that could accommodate some special events in the future. Heritage might be one of those. Yeah, right. That's a good point, though. Downtown's an exciting place to be. There's a lot of new development going on, but maybe there's a need for a more remote venue. Yes, sir.
I know this is a delicate question, some in Lynchburg, but has anyone ever approached Liberty University for funding for this?
Can't speak to that directly.
Liberty University for funding.
I guess we're open to looking at all sources and opportunities as they arise. I don't know of any.
You don't know if they've been directly asked or.
I don't know that.
Okay.
I'm not sure of that. I can look into that.
No, the University of Lynchburg, Blackwater Creek, possibility that there's going to be work to extend that.
They already have. They sure have. The extension from Blackwater Athletic area will go under a new bridge and then pick back up. We've already developed that bridge. It goes across the campus, and then we have a boardwalk that ends at the Shirley Road terminus. The next portion of that trail will be Shirley Road terminus all the way to Investment Park. So yeah, in parking with us.
That's a way to go. I would be.
We got another Zoom chat. I'll take this one for Hannah. Does the plan include the proposed improvements to the community market? If so, where can we view them in the plan?
Yes, we include those plans in the full master plan. I think some other documents are available through the Parks Department as well.
That's the last plan that was developed for Lynchburg community market. The Wendell plan. And I need someone to tell me if the Wendell plan is actually up on our website or on the Lynchburg Community Market website. Do we know that, Brian? Do we know if that? Okay, yes. But it also in the CIP for the Lynchburg Community Market is interior and exterior renovations of, I think it's about 4.5 to $5 million.
Anything else? I know there's a big football game tonight. I don't want to hold anybody up. But I do appreciate, oh, we have a question.
I have a question, but I haven't looked into that.
That's why we're here.
Tell you, I live in Lynchburg, love it, and compliments to everything that y'all do in recreation. My question is about trails and the desire for trails for recreation, and people talk about recreation, and that's infinitely important. But I'm also curious, or I guess my hope is that we're talking about trails for recreation, we're also talking about trails for access and trails for transportation and trails as a means to provide access to residents to those key destinations that they need to be. So and that was considered in that prioritization. Another thing, I'm just as a thought, I know with the infrastructure bill and the desire to look at a portion of those funds, to look at equity descriptions and 40% of those federal dollars. And so that may be another component of the evaluation as you're looking at, and that prioritization of, there's a recreation that you want to have to those that recreate for recreation purposes, and then there's those needs for movement to provide access for those that don't have transportation, and that just might be a consideration for that prioritization.
Absolutely. Hannah, could y'all go back to that trails map? Maybe. You made some really good points, and I just want to speak to a couple of those. We absolutely wanted to connect certain destinations. First, we were connecting parks, but then we realized there are so many schools along this route as well. And then we got to Fort Avenue, and that was the most direct way to get back to City Stadium. So the idea for this stretch is to have some type of complete street project that would make it better for walkers and cyclists along Fort Avenue while accommodating vehicular traffic too. It's such a primary corridor. So absolutely, we were excited to find that opportunity. And you want a variety of trails. It's great. There are sections of your trails where you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, and you might be, but you also want to be able to navigate downtown as well. And I think you've got that opportunity here. Also, your point about funding, that's why we want to make these as flexible as possible. If you see an opportunity on the rise with a certain grant, some kind of windfall from the federal government or somebody else, you want to be able to adjust that to take advantage of it. So when you see everything listed in the CIP, realize that those are there for future opportunities as they arise. It's not mandate that you execute all of them on your own. You're looking for those other opportunities with Liberty or other universities or other government entities as well. Anything else? Any folks online? Well, thank you again for your time. If you have more questions, please send those to the email address that'll be linked on the website, and we'll look forward to hearing from you.
You're welcome to take